much for hosting us today. I will just tell you on a personal level who Mike is. He is a devoted father. He makes time all the time for his children. It kills him if there's a time when they ask him to do something or to make time for them and he can't. So about 99% of the time, he makes time for them and whatever they're doing. He's also a great soccer coach. He will be a basketball coach if he has to. And he loves to ski. Every Saturday you will find him skiing with his kids in Utah. And that, coming from California and a tropical place like this, was really hard for us to embrace the snow of Utah, but they love it. And that's Mike Dutton.
Tanner, and my husband is Scott Tanner. He was born and raised in Southern California. He's the 11th of 13 children, and he likes to say that it's statistically proven that the 11th child is the best adjusted. We're not sure where all those statistics are gathered together, but he likes to say that. We have 6 children, and our 5th child just left on a mission to Rome, Italy, and he had to take himself to the MTC because we're in Hawaii. So, this is our first trip to Hawaii, and we have fallen in love with it. We really love this place and are really excited to be here.
Go for it, Mike. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I love speaking about entrepreneurship because I believe that entrepreneurs are the greatest force for good in the world. If you think about what entrepreneurs do, they start companies that employ people, they start companies that solve world problems. If you think about where we would be today without some of the great innovations that we've had in the last 50 years, really, those have been driven by entrepreneurs. And so I'm excited to talk to you about it and kind of give you my entrepreneurship story and then answer any questions that you have. So, what I thought we'd do is we talk about, quickly kind of our paths to entrepreneurship. Scott and I both have, differing paths, and there's many different ways to be an entrepreneur. Some become entrepreneurs for a corporate world, and some are entrepreneurs because, their parents had a lot of money and that allowed them to start a business. My story is, entrepreneurship, bootstrapping, not having any money, and making it happen. And there's just a lot of ways to do that, and I want to, tell you our stories and hopefully inspire you to be entrepreneurs. And then we'll talk about the case study of Winder Farms. It's a company that Scott and I are both involved with today. It's a company we bought about 10 years ago, and I want to take you through that transaction because I think that that's another way for you to be an entrepreneur. I partnered with some people to buy this company 3 months after finishing my MBA. There's a new kind of trend among people coming out of business schools to go and buy a business immediately. So don't go and spend years and years toiling away working for somebody else. I'm going to tell you a way that you can buy a business right out of school. So I'll give you that story, and then just kind of some parting thoughts on entrepreneurship. And really, this is your time. I'm here on vacation and loving it. I'm glad that we have an opportunity to come here and stop me at any time if you have any questions because I really want this to be, helpful for you guys. And so my story, I grew up in Southern California in Rancho Cucamonga. Anybody here happen to be around? Are you really from Rancho Cucamonga?
Yes.
What's your last name?
Barnes. Yeah.
Barnes? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So my wife and I grew up in the Chafee Ward in Rancho Cucamonga. And went to BYU, and while I was at BYU, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I was a political science major, and not really wanting to go to law school, thought about doing that, and then one day a friend of mine called me up and said, hey, I'm at Foot Locker, and they've got these Birkenstock sandals on sale for $10. You should come down and buy yourself some Birkenstocks. And there they are, those ugly sandals at the top. And I thought, oh wait, this is back in the early 90s. I should go buy me some Birkenstocks. And so I go to Foot Locker and I'm there, and they have, Foot Locker was getting out of the sandal business. And so here are these $80 sandals that they're selling for $10. And the light bulb went off on, why don't I just buy all of these? And there were, I don't know, 50 or 60 on the table at that Foot Locker. And so actually my roommate and I took out our credit cards and we bought all of those Birkenstocks. And then we went around to every store within, 100 miles of where we were, and we bought every pair of Birkenstocks that Foot Locker had, and we ended up with 300 pairs of Birkenstocks. And over the next couple of weeks, we tried different things for, selling these shoes. Eventually set up on street corners, played loud music, had a party, and we sold all these Birkenstocks. And I made like $7,000 on the deal. And, over kind of a 2 or 3 week period, I thought, this is awesome. I just made $7 grand for selling Birkenstocks. So that's how I bought my wife's engagement ring. And then, just kind of went off and started, working on different businesses. And so, I started building websites for people and just doing different things. And I found that I really liked being in control of my own destiny. And so I graduated with a political science degree, which is completely useless. And but because I had this kind of technology background, a little bit of building websites, I got a job with a consulting firm. And so this is a big consulting firm in San Francisco, and they were paying me nothing and charging me out for hundreds of dollars an hour to tell businesses how to build, to tell big companies how to build businesses for the internet. This is in the mid-90s. And so I did that for a couple of years, which I thought was just insane because I didn't know anything. I got some experience, and after only doing that for 2 years, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I want to go try to do something more entrepreneurial. And so I went and I joined a small software company, and I learned how to build software products. I was in marketing at that software company. And the reason I'm going through this is because I had, I got some experience and learned a few things. I learned how to become a marketer. And then I took that experience, and that startup was wildly successful. It was a kind of a .com internet banking company. That company sold in the late 90s for way too much money from what it was worth. And then I went off to business school. And while in business school, I think it's a perfect time when you're in college to start a business. And so while I was there, I started a conference company, putting on technology trade shows. And so because I had this technology and marketing background, I had some knowledge of an industry, and so I started a company putting on trade shows. Well, on the day that I graduated, I sold that company it was a great deal for me. It meant that I could graduate from college and not go take a real job. And so from that is kind of then when I got into doing this thing called Dutton Capital Group. And now we go out and we raise capital, we buy companies, and here are some of the companies that we own today. Who here is familiar with Winter Farms? So that's good. And then anybody here run a Ragnar relay? Only one. That's interesting. So, or anybody here know what Ragnar relays are? Okay, so there's more of you. So that's it's a 200-mile relay race that you get 12 of your friends together and you go run kind of this 200 miles, everybody running 3 5-mile segments. So that's one of our portfolio companies. Anybody here into yoga? Or know what Manduka is? So Manduka is a yoga mat company. Yogi Toes is another yoga mat company, or yoga company we own. And so anyway, so we've got a portfolio of businesses that kind of started all with Birkenstocks. And so that's kind of my quick story. And Scott, why don't you kind of give your story and do the pitch?
Okay, great. So Mike's more what I'd call a serial entrepreneur. And he's been sort of an entrepreneur and sort of from the very beginning sort of had that mentality. I think I've had a little bit more non-traditional path to get into entrepreneurship. So a lot of people, you think of these entrepreneurs, they're 5-year-old kids and they have their lemonade stand. That was not me. I kind of got into it later. But I will say that my wife put her finger on this a number of years ago. She said, Scott, you always like to be on a steep learning curve. In other words, I'm not the kind of person that likes to be what they call minding the store, just kind of making sure everything's going okay. I like to build businesses. I like to grow things. So I think that's been part of my mentality, and it's been my approach in my education. And when I've been at different companies, even though they've been big corporate companies sometimes, I've tried to take an entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial approach. So my early job out of business school was with Apple Computer. You've all heard of Apple Computer, I'm sure. In fact, I put the old logo on here because this was a number of years ago for me. So this is sort of classic Apple. And I had a great time there and spent 7 years there. I did a lot of things at Apple that were more entrepreneurial. That was really a leading edge company, still is in so many ways. But back then, 25 years ago, it was even more so. And so we did a lot of things that were sort of leading edge and very entrepreneurial within the company. Then I decided to do a turnaround. So I went to Utah and went to a company called Clover Club. Are any of you from Utah have heard of Clover Club? I'm not sure if your generation would know it because it was a while ago, but it was a long time company. It was around for many decades. And we were in actually 16 western states, but we were a potato chip manufacturer and distributor. What I did at Clover Club is basically took them through a bankruptcy. It was really, looking back on my career, the hardest thing I've done in my career. I spent a little over 2 years there. But I grew so much from that experience. I learned so much from that experience. So, you know, now, nothing scares me. After having done that, nothing scares me. I'm willing to take on challenges. So that's one thing I learned from that experience. I got to go from that extreme to something called 1-800-CONTACTS. 1-800-CONTACTS, any of you use 1-800-CONTACTS? Or contact lenses? It's the largest distributor of contact lenses, online distributor and over-the-phone distributor and marketer of contact lenses in the world by far. And I got to help take that company public. So I went from taking a company through bankruptcy to taking a company public, and it was really quite different. It was a lot more fun to take a company public, but I learned probably as much or more from the turnaround situation. So I did that for 5 or so years, and then I left 1-800-CONTACTS and did my own first sort of true startup on my own. It was called 1-800-GO-FIRST. I did that really only for a couple of years. It was an errand and concierge service. So basically we did grocery shopping for people, we picked up and delivered dry cleaning for people, we did house cleaning services for people, pretty much anything you wanted to do. You could call 1-800-GO-FIRST and we would do it for you. I started that business in Utah, which is where we're living at the time. That was really, I would say, not a successful startup. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. Most of you who are entrepreneurs will probably have some situations where you can look back and say, I didn't make a lot of money on that. I have a great friend who's made a lot of money starting up companies, and he started a donut business once, and he said, we sold it for $1. We lost a lot of money of our own capital in that business, but they learned a lot. And that's kind of how 1-800-GO-FIRST was for me. I got it break even within a year, but I was basically just not even paying myself. And I ran it another year while I was doing another job, which was called Juice It. But I learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot about cash. What I also learned is I had a good business model, but it wasn't in the right place. So in Utah, what I found pretty quickly is people were not really willing to pay a lot of money for services. You know, in Utah, people had their home teachers, and they had their neighbors, and they had a lot of extended family around. And so they were less likely to hire someone to do some of those services for them. I grew up in Southern California, had a lot of siblings there, and they said, come down here, come to LA, or come to the Bay Area. There's a lot of disposable capital available, and people are very busy, usually two-income families, and they would pay for these services. But we didn't want to relocate our family, so we decided I sold that company. But it wasn't one that I made a lot of money on, but I learned a lot from it. Juice It was another company that was kind of a turnaround beverage distribution business, a small company that we grew in sales and got profitable. And then, about 5.5 years ago, I came to Winter Farms. And we're going to talk a lot more about Winter Farms, so I won't go into that. I just will say one thing. That's where I met Mike Dutton. And I don't usually say this publicly because I don't want his head to get too big, but Mike is one of the main reasons that I came to Winter Farms and that I'm at Winter Farms. He's a great person to work with. And if there's one thing that you take away from this class, I don't know that you'll see it in our slides, in our presentation today, think about the people that you're going to work with. Think about, you know, life is really short. And at the end of the day, you want to work with people that you respect, people that you trust, people that are smart, people that you can build a business together with. It makes a huge difference. And that's made a great difference for me. So my wife has told me that this is the happiest she's ever seen me, is in this particular part of my career at Winter Farms. And I feel that way. It's been a great ride. So that's kind of my background as an entrepreneur.
Scott, that was so nice. Okay, thank you, Scott. So let me tell you about this story of this legacy brand. We bought the company about 10 years ago now, and I want to tell you kind of how we got the deal done, lessons from entrepreneurship from it, and maybe there might be some lessons for you as you go and try to buy your own business. And so here's a company founded in 1880. It's the 5th oldest business in Utah. The founder of the company became a member of the first presidency of the church. And so, by the time we got involved in the business, there were 5th generation family members working within the business. And so it's got a long and storied history. But what happened is in 2004, what they had is they had a milkman business. They had a business that was delivering milk in bottles to people's doors. And they thought of themselves as a dairy. They thought, well, we've got all these cows. Cows produce milk, and the way that we get rid of that milk is by delivering it to people's doors. But the business was underinvested in. If you think about businesses that you might start today, if you start a business today, that is going to be part of your life's work. And you're gonna work really hard on it, and you're gonna make sure that it doesn't fail, and you care a lot about it, and it's where you're deriving your income. And then what happens is as businesses get passed down from one generation to the other, and then to another, and then to another, and now you're on the 5th generation, at some point, the people who own the business are no longer working in the business. And they're used to getting checks from the company when the company makes profits, but they don't want to write a check back to the company to reinvest in the business. And that was what had happened here. Now you're in the 5th generation, and nobody's willing to invest in the business, and so now you've got a shrinking business that has no technology and a very thin management team. In 2004, when we got there, there were 3 computers in the entire company. This is not ancient history, this is 2004. And so, that's what happened. So they had this great brand, people loved the brand, they had an interesting business, but they were dying because they were not investing in the business. And so, for us, we looked at that as a reinvention opportunity. My other business is a company called Dolphin Capital Group. And that's the company that we make investments out of to buy businesses. And we look for companies that are underperforming where we can go buy that company and then we can turn it around. And that's the opportunity that we saw here. And so what happened in this business is that they had an accounting challenge. And without getting into a lot of details, they thought they were making more money than what they were. And they took those bank statements, they took their financials to a bank, and they borrowed against their cash flow. The problem was that the cash flow that they were projecting to a bank really wasn't there. And so through the course of an audit, they discovered that their financials were incorrect, and that put them in default with their bank. And so a bank, even if you're making your bank payments, you have these things called covenants. We're all familiar with covenants, right? But banks have covenants too, and they say, well, if some of your financial ratios get out of balance, then we can recall our loan. And that's what happened to the bank here. And so they were foreclosing on their loan because the company was not as sound as they thought it was, as it was. And then through the course of all of this, the CEO dies of a heart attack. And so really what happened, you created this perfect storm of bad news for this family who owned this business, had been around forever, but then in the course of a few years, all of these things happened, and that brought them to have to do a transaction. Because they did not have, either the ability or the want to, really reinvest in the business. And so we saw an opportunity to get involved. And so there's lots of businesses that you can get involved with. And I want to tell you why I chose to get involved with this one. And I think it's important for you as you look for opportunities, aligning with what Scott said, making sure that the people there that you want to work with, but also are there opportunities that really leverage your skill set. For me, I'm a sales and marketing guy. And so I like to find businesses where I can get involved and really grow those companies. And that's exactly what Winder had. I thought, boy, they have this home delivery grocer. Who doesn't want to have products delivered to their house? And so if we could find a way to grow this company, that could be really interesting. Also, it was the right size of business. It was, about a $10 million business. I like the fact that, it had some moving parts and momentum that we can go in and we can tweak some of the metrics and we can change the outcome of the business. So I like the size of it. I like the fact that it's a huge market. If you think about businesses that you can start, food is about 15% of GDP. Consumers spend about $1 trillion on food a year, and so I like the fact that this was a big market. I like brand, and the reason why I like brand is that people cannot knock off your brand. Brand provides a competitive barrier to other people coming into your business. Brand allows you to charge more money for your product. Brand allows you to have good margins. And so because of these things, I got really excited about it. And finally, it was just fun. I like what we do. I like selling healthy food to people. I like making people's lives more convenient. I like that we've got trucks and we've got a plant and we've got, internet marketing. We've got all these things going on. It's a fun business because it has so many moving parts. And so that's why I like this deal. I think it's, you're only going to do so many deals in your lifetime, so you're probably, well served to pick ones that you like. And then, kind of a fundamental question for me is does the business model work? Scott mentioned that he's seen some businesses, in his past that haven't worked. I have as well. We've made investments in some candy companies. The candy business is a really hard business, and that's because the margins are small. Your customers are really concentrated. The cycles of the business are difficult. And so there are just some things that, in the candy business that I don't like. In this business model, what I like is, I guess my point is make sure you understand the part of the business that really makes it work. Do you understand the company's business model? And what I like about this model is it's a recurring revenue model. If you think about, certain businesses, if I were to start a lemonade stand out on the highway, I'd have to convince customers to come into my lemonade stand every single day. There are other businesses that are subscription businesses. I can sign up for an online service, and you're going to charge my credit card until I stop taking that service. Winder is the same way. I sign up a customer, and then I deliver to them every single week without them having to do anything. And so I like that part of the business model. So, just make sure that, the businesses that you get in, you understand really what makes them tick. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what we knew about the business when we got involved, and I want somebody to tell me what they think that they should pay for this business. All right? So, the business had $1 million, they thought $1 million of earnings. They had real estate that was valued at $1.5 million. And they had plant equipment valued at $2 million. Okay, so $1 million of earnings, real estate of $2 million, and plant equipment, I'll call it $2 million. So $1 million, 2, and 2. Anybody want to kind of, venture a guess on what they would pay for that? What would you pay for $1 million of earnings? Plus $2 million of real estate, plus $2 million of old plant equipment. Yeah. 6.5. How'd you come to that?
Earnings, you're supposed to times it by 3 years, and then your whatever you have that's has a real value, so the real estate and the plant, $1 million.
Okay. So you said 6? 6.5. Okay, so yeah, so one way to value a company is on a multiple of earnings. And a very common multiple for small businesses you'll hear about is kind of 3 times earnings. I often hear, more like 5 times, 3 to 5 times EBITDA. Faster growing businesses might trade for more than that. We just invested in a company and we paid 10 times EBITDA because the company was growing so fast. So that's one way to evaluate a business is on a multiple of earnings. Anybody else want to, render another guess? Come on, let's get one more. Anybody else have another opinion? First day of class, got your professor here, you want to impress him? Yeah, you got one structure?
Yes. 8 million.
8 million, how'd you come to that?
It was a good guess.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to tell you what we paid, and I'm going to tell you how we financed the deal. And so the deal, we did a $1 million cash payment. And what that money really went to do is to pay off some of the lenders. And so the lenders were secured in their position with the company, so even though they were in default on their bank debt, the lenders knew that they could sell the assets and get their money out. And so, we had to pay off one of the lenders $1 million to allow them for us to do this deal. And then we took on another $2 million of debt. So what we paid in enterprise value was $3 million. And the reason why that was a fair deal is because, upon further due diligence, the $1 million of earnings really wasn't there. And also the company was in a state of decline. What we often describe it as, there's a lot of hair on this deal. There wasn't a management team. It was in an unsexy industry. I mean, who gets milk delivered to their house anymore? Nobody wanted to get involved because, I had a bank tell me, well, why would we want to be in the buggy whip business? What you're trying to buy is a buggy whip business, and nobody needs buggy whips anymore. And so for all of those reasons, the company could be had at, I think it was a fair value on both sides, but, lower than what a typical earnings multiple would find. On the earnings multiple, I find that a lot of small businesses have unrealistic expectations on what their businesses are worth. They read what companies sell for in the Wall Street Journal, and they think they could apply those same metrics to their small business. And so, I would just keep that in mind. So what's interesting about this is, so we bought this company, and it took us $1 million of cash. And you say, well, $1 million, man, how would I ever have $1 million of cash? Well, you don't have to. We could have, what we did is a month after doing this deal, we brought in a private equity partner who put in another $1 million of cash, which at the time, we probably could have structured that so that we had no cash into the business. And so long as we were able to borrow $1 million from somebody, we could have gotten this deal done and then financed ourselves out, a month later by bringing on another partner. The other thing that we did in this business is that we sold the real estate. And so about a year into the deal, after we had stabilized the business and shown that we can grow it and do it profitably, we went out to the real estate market and we put the real estate up for sale. And when we bought the company, the real estate appraised for about $1.5 million, so not quite $2 million, about $1.5 million. And what we did is we sold the real estate to an investor for $2.5 million. And that's because the company was more stable and he could believe in his lease payments. And so at that point too, we could have paid ourselves out all of our capital. And I just share these things with you because if you understand financing and assets and borrowing, you can buy a pretty substantial business without having lots of access to capital. And that's what we do at Dutton Capital Group, is we'll partner with an entrepreneur who has, for whatever reason, they've locked up a deal. They know the owner, or they know the industry, or it's somebody who's in their family, or whatever. For some reason, they know a business is for sale, and they want to buy it, and they want to partner with somebody like us, and they don't have a lot of cash, and we make those kinds of deals happen all the time. And so don't let the fact that you don't have a nickel to your name as a student prevent you from trying to buy a business, because I'm telling you, it happens every day. Okay, any questions at this point? Yeah.
Was the benefit in selling the real estate just that cash flow?
Yep. So what we wanted to do is so there's the initial, buying the business, which required capital. And at the time, it was about a $10 million business. Well, we're about a $50 million business today. And we've done that by expanding into Nevada and into California. And those things required more investments. And so we could try to raise more capital and put money into the business, or we can turn our assets into cash and use that to fund the business. And over time, we've done a combination of both. But when we sold the real estate, we injected all that capital back into the business to expand.
Was the real estate not where the plant and everything was?
Yeah, so it's exactly where the plant and everything is.
So how did you still have a company if you sold all of this?
So we went from being a landowner to a tenant. And so the company and everything sits on the same plot of land, using the same plant, all the same assets. It's just that, you know, the person who owns it on title is not us anymore, and we pay them lease payments. Sale, it's called a sale leaseback transaction. It is, if you understand it, it is a great way to buy a business. Yeah.
So I'm looking around and I see like a lot of people just kind of like glazed over. And so like a takeaway value for me is like here where BYU, our financial metrics are a little bit different on the overall general perspective. So like if I'm supposed to walk away from this lecture and say, because I'm taking from this lecture, I walk away, I find some people, I do a leverage buyout deal, and I mean that's basically what we were talking about. We do some kind of buyout deal, but like how do I walk away with that same concept? I mean, do I take finance classes or like, I mean, I'm just trying to relate that to the general people here.
Yeah. So you should take finance classes. What I got, the most important thing that I got out of business school was finance and accounting classes, because if you understand balance sheets and assets, you can get deals done. If you walk into a private equity player, because what you need to do is you need to learn to speak our language. And if you walk into me and you can talk about income statements and balance sheets and why you want to buy a business, I'm going to listen. If you really don't have, you know, your handle on that, I'm not. And so, you know, I would usually, I think that your finance and your accounting classes are some of the most important classes that you can get out of school. Yeah.
I mean, just give a little announcement. Right after this class is one of our new courses called Cycle Cash. Ken Lundin, stand up, Ken. Ken is teaching that class. He's already had one section taught, but if you want to add that class, isn't that directly one of the major things that we're teaching in, it's called Entrepreneurship 180, the Cycle of Cash. That's like, Logan, that actually is one of the key things, why that's now one of our requirements in our new minor and our certificate. Understanding some of those financials. Yeah, maybe you're not going to do a multi-million-dollar thing up front, but these principles absolutely will tie into the Cycle of Cash course. It's not, you don't have to take a full finance classes or even accounting. Well, those are really good. Some of what you'll get in Cycle of Cash will help.
I'll take lunch and kick back.
Yeah. And also, this is a bigger deal. You know, my first kind of, you know, bigger deal was at a technology company, or was a conference company. I financed that whole business by borrowing money from vendors. And so what you do is, you know, that business put on trade shows. And so I go to a hotel and say, okay, I'm going to put an event in your hotel in April, and I'm not going to pay you until July. And I go to a marketing company and say, hey, I need you to give me services in February and March, but I'm not going to pay you until June or July. And so by learning how to, manage your accounts receivable and your accounts payable and those balance sheet things, you can finance smaller businesses. Okay, so we talked a little bit about that. Let me just kind of go to, you know, kind of what we've done. You know, so that was getting the deal done, but that doesn't create jobs or create economics. It's really about, you know, turning the business around. And Scott's going to talk about that.
So, you know, it's interesting because a lot of times you think of entrepreneurship when you think of startups. And Mike and I have both been involved in startups, but now we're talking about a storied company that's been around for 125 years. So what we're trying to tell you is that there are entrepreneurial opportunities everywhere you look, even in a company that's been around for generations. And that's kind of what we're talking about with Winter Farms in this case study. So we were reinventing a company that's been around for 125 years. And here was the strategy. First of all, our vision was to have farm fresh products to your door. Fresh, all-natural, organic, healthy products. There are a lot of industry's trends suggesting that this was the fastest growing part of the grocery and food industry. So we felt like if we could focus on that, not just milk, but expand to these other products, focus on fresh, healthy, all-natural, and sometimes organic, that would be an important part of our strategy. We wanted to do branded products for the reasons that Mike was talking about before. Brand, if you have a brand, you have to invest in that brand. But if you have a brand, you could command high margins that could really help finance your business. Then as far as execution on that strategy, first thing was to shore up the existing infrastructure. As Mike said, there were 3 computers in this company, and this was 10 years ago. You know, we're not talking, ancient ones. This is 10 years ago, three computers in the company. The drivers, instead of having any kind of electronic system for taking people's orders when they were delivered to their homes, the people left little notes out on their porches, and the drivers looked at the notes and said, oh, okay, I'll take this off the truck and deliver it to you. So they didn't even know what they were going to be delivering until they got to your front porch. Or maybe you were going on vacation, they left a note saying I'm going on vacation. I didn't know that, and so now I have all this extra product on my truck. So there was no really technology in the company. The plant would have very old kind of equipment, wasn't working as well. There are a lot of things behind the technology and the infrastructure. The team, really, as Mike said, there wasn't really much of a management team there, and certainly not a bench. And so those are all parts of the infrastructure that the idea was to shore that up. Second thing was to penetrate the existing footprint. So we were in a small part of Utah, basically the Wasatch Front was the major population center, but maybe had about 2% penetration of households. And we knew we could have better penetration for that. Not only because there was an opportunity for it on the sales side, but that helped us on the operational side. Because part of our business is density. If we're going down the street to deliver to one house, that's pretty expensive, but if I can deliver to 2 or 3 or 4 houses on that same street, I'm already driving down the street anyway. I'm already paying the driver, already paying for the vehicle, already paying for the gas. If I can deliver to 3 or 4 or 5 houses on that street, the economics of my business now just changed drastically. The third one was to sell more product to existing customers. Same concept. I'm going to that house and now I'm bringing milk to your house. Well, what if I bring milk and eggs and juice and produce and bread and all those things to that same house? The economics and the margins change considerably for our business. And the last one was, once you do all those things, take that same model and expand geographically to other areas. Implant that same model on other places. You have a certain amount of overhead. People like Mike and me and other people in the business that, you're not going to need more of those people if you expand to other areas. And so you can leverage that overhead into other parts of the business. You don't have to pay for it again, but you can get a lot more revenue and profit from the business in other places. So we went from Winder Dairy back in the day to Winder Farms, and we actually renamed the company. And the idea behind that was we wanted people to realize that we're not just a dairy. We aren't focused necessarily on just producing the milk for you from the cows, but we're focused on bringing to you a lot of great products, healthy products from the farm. Our advertising changed and the whole sort of mindset and model changed. Now back in that time, 10 years ago, this wasn't a very popular concept. In fact, it was a little bit unpopular. There had been a company called Webvan that had tried to do this and was, lost a horrible amount, $200 million or something like that. They had gone public and they lost all this money that they had invested. And so people were really kind of negative on this kind of model. But we knew that there was a better way to do it and make it successful. And so that was part of the strategy and the execution. We really didn't have a website back then. There was no way for a customer to go online, this was only 10 years ago, to go online and change their order. They had to call on the phone to change their order or leave a note on the porch. And so we introduced a website where people could do that. Some of the investments and innovations that we made in the company were, first on the technology side. So we invested in the equipment and the plant so we could make sure that we had always top quality milk product. We pretty much only make the dairy products, and the other parts we source and resell. And in fact, I'm happy to say that we have been successful in that. We actually won the award for the best milk in the world at the World Dairy Expo a couple of years ago. And our chocolate milk also won that same award. So we're really proud of where we've come, but back then we were really building on a brand and a legacy. As I mentioned, the trucks had just manually written orders, so we introduced handheld systems. Software that allows us to optimize the route. So if we're adding a lot of new customers, and sometimes customers leave, they move or whatever, they're coming off the route, we needed a way to efficiently add customers to that route and reroute it so we went in an efficient order. Instead of driving across town to go to the different customers, we did it in an efficient way. Web ordering, as I mentioned, also text reminders. We deliver product to your porch in the evening during the night when you're sleeping. So you may forget to bring that in, and then you go away to work or school, and then that product would get warm on your porch during the day. And so now we send text reminders to you to remind you to bring the product in the morning when you wake up. Also, we remind you to change your order. You want to add it into your order. And then using things like Groupon and other social couponing things like Living Social so that people can order and we can sign up new customers through those kinds of methods. But not all the innovations were technological. There were a lot of things that were just kind of thinking about the business model and how could we do it better. I know my brother Richard's partner, and Richard built a business in mini storage. And my brother-in-law was his partner, and he told me once, he said, you know, a lot of people think that startups and entrepreneurial things always have to be technology companies. But he primarily invests in things that are really not very technological, because you can make a lot of innovation. In fact, a lot of times there's a lot less competitiveness in a non-technological area like a window dairy was at the time. So some of the other things were, again, expanding their product, like going beyond milk, delivering at night. So they used to deliver during the day. So what we had is we had a driver who would get up at 2 or 3 in the morning, load the truck, go deliver product to these customers at their houses, and then they'd go back and try and sign up customers in those same neighborhoods. What we found is the kind of person that's going to be delivering product, lifting it off the truck, and a very manual process is probably a different person than the kind of person that likes to be in front of you face to face and signing you up as a customer, selling you. It's sort of a different personality. So we separated those, and we had the drivers work at night. And by the way, you were able to avoid a lot of traffic and a lot of other complications by delivering at night. And then we use those same vehicles, by the way, for our sales reps who now take those vehicles out and park on the corner or go to neighborhoods and they sell it. So we were able to leverage the assets as well as make sure that we had the right kind of personalities in different parts of the business. Finally, we reintroduced glass bottles. So we were selling only in plastic bottles, but we introduced glass bottles, which is kind of a throwback to the past, but people really like that kind of retro feel and look. And now 20–25% of the bottles that we sell are all in glass. So just another kind of product innovation. So now that we've done these, we've sort of developed the strategy, we executed, we said, how do we know if we're doing well? How do we measure our success? And really the answer is the old acronym KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. We really came down to one measure, and that's lifetime value. And lifetime value is the way that we look at the business. We have a lot of metrics in our business. People come from the outside and look at our business and say, wow, you guys really, you have a handle on the numbers. And we have a lot of detail there, but it really all flows from lifetime value. We have 3 or 4 measures of lifetime value that we look at, and a lot of subsidiary metrics below them. And so here's how we look at lifetime value. It's very simple. We say, how many deliveries is this customer going to take between the time she signs up with us and the time she quits service with us? How many total deliveries is that? Then we look at how much money do we put in our pocket for each of those deliveries. So we call that contribution per delivery. That gives us a lifetime value of a customer. Then we say, but there's another part of that equation, that is how much does it cost us to get that customer in the first place? We have to pay a commission to a sales rep, or we have to do advertising or something like that to get that customer to come to us and sign up with us. So what does that cost? Okay, that's what we call a customer acquisition cost. So we net those two together. We subtract that customer acquisition cost and get the net lifetime value of the customer. And so as an example, I'll just go through these. Let's say we have 100 deliveries from that customer, $5 in every delivery. That would give us a $500 lifetime value. Let's say it costs us $200 all in to sign up that customer. We're going to make $300 net on that customer. You would do that all day long because you're going to be making money out of every customer that you get. So that's how we look at the world of parts. How are we doing so far? We've talked a little bit about this. We've been hitting on the natural and organic. 80% of our revenue is from our branded products. We've been able to add the technology and infrastructure, and just to go through these quickly. We've doubled our size in Utah, doubled our number of customers there. We've also gone from 50 products to 300 products for our customers. Our revenue per delivery has gone from $10 to roughly $25. So we're able to deliver more each time we stop at a house. And now we've moved into Las Vegas as an extension beyond Utah. And just for the last year, we've also been in California, which is an area we've been trying to go. So I think we've done a pretty good job on that, as well as, and those have all added up to increasing our lifetime value. I'm just going to talk one more slide. This is what I learned as an entrepreneur. First one is cash. I learned in school that cash is king. Cash is king. You've got to have cash. There are plenty of companies that make a lot of profits that end up going under. It's because you have to have cash. So make sure you have sources for cash. You don't have to necessarily have it yourself, as Mike said. But you need to have sources of cash in the business. Never run out. Second one is the CEO. CEO is so important. They will drive the entire culture of the company. And I've seen this in a bankrupt company where we had an ineffective CEO, and I've seen it in places like Winter where I have a very effective CEO. CEO makes such a difference. And to expand that broadly, look at the team. Mike and Dolphin Capital, when they're evaluating companies, they look at the management team probably first and foremost. Almost as much as even the business idea, because you have to have people that execute the business plan. Keep it simple, as we talked about, and then just always know that there's going to be change. There's going to be change in every business. I like this quote: the art of progress is to preserve order amid change and preserve change mid-order. Sometimes you need to change things to make improvements, but you also have to have some consistent measures and weight, principles and things like that. Ethics is something I'm sure you'll talk about with each person that comes in and talks about the business here. Very, very important. You have to be able to trust the people that you deal with. And so those are some of my takeaways, and I'll let Mike talk about business.
All right. So I've got a, I guess, two-party thoughts. One is, if you look at the Inc. 500, which lists the fastest growing businesses in the country, only half of those businesses have ever raised capital from somebody else. And so, we profiled the bigger deal today where, we had her start with $1 million of cash. But most of the fastest growing businesses in America never raise outside capital. So I hope that doesn't, deter you from, pursuing your own entrepreneurial ambitions. I won't go through all of these, but I guess I'll give you one parting thought. For a while, I was teaching a class at BYU, and it was a class like this, BYU Provo, and it was a class like this, and it was geared toward, there's a lot of students in there who are undergraduates in majors other than business. And I had one biology student come up to me afterwards and say, I love your class. I want to go be an entrepreneur. I thought about being an entrepreneur, but what I really want to do is I want to change the world for good. And I was taken back by that. And so this is a favorite scripture of mine that I'll just read it. Well, you guys can read it, but it basically says that it's okay to pursue and build worth if you are doing it to share with others. If you think about what businesses do, our company today employs about 300 families. People who can go to work and feed their families because of the company that we've created. I think that businesses that do that have, do many, many things for society. I think being a business person, a good employer, a fair employer, honest in your dealings, I think those things, do change the world. And so, hopefully we've inspired you a little bit, want to be entrepreneurs. So, hopefully we'll meet some of you afterwards and at lunch. And thanks for letting us speak with you.